There's something very strange going on with the children of the forest and their Weirwood Hivemind beyond the wall. In Bloodraven's cave, dozens, if not hundreds of them are enthroned in weirwoods, just like Brynden Rivers, with weirwood roots coiling around and inside their flesh. They are half corpse and half tree, and these greenseers believe that weirwood trees are the old gods, and once their mortal bodies are finished, their souls, memories, and all their knowledge will fuse with the weirwood. Through the trees, the children of the forest remember everything. But is this godhood fully benevolent? Are the old gods even real? Or are they just a ruse made up by the greenseers? An avatar of their magic that can be used to manipulate humans? We should consider what the children of the forest actually want, where the others actually come from, and why Bloodraven is helping the children when all signs point to conflict between humans and children of the forest. A tale as old as time. So what do I mean by Weirwood Hivemind? In Game of Thrones, the only greenseer tangled within the roots of a weirwood tree that we saw was Bloodraven. Excuse me, the three-eyed raven. Given that this man has two good eyes, neither eye is red, and there's no raven-shaped birthmark on his cheek, we cannot call him Bloodraven. But in the books, Bloodraven is not alone in that cave. In addition to Leaf, Ash, Scales, and the others who served the last greenseer, aka Bloodraven, there are places in this cave system where children of the forest are wedded to weirwood trees as well. Bran discovered more passages and chambers on the far side. One was full of singers, enthroned like Brynden in nests of weirwood roots that wove under and through and around their bodies. Most of them looked dead to him, but as he crossed in front of them, their eyes would open and follow the light of his torch, and one of them opened and closed a wrinkled mouth, as if he were trying to speak. The children of the forest, in their native language, are actually called those who sing the song of the earth, or just singers. These singers who Bran found are greenseers, and Bloodraven says they live very short lives, but their wisdom lives forever inside the trees. They become part of the godhood because they believe the weirwood trees themselves are the old gods. In a sense, we're seeing self-sacrifice by the children of the forest to make their gods more powerful. If the old gods demand self-sacrifice, this mirrors R'hllor, who demands the sacrifice of non-believers, like when Melisandre burned Gunster Sunglass and Alistair Florent to appease the Red God. Essentially, the religion of the old gods is a cult. They have a charismatic leader who lures young boys into an isolated nature retreat to become indoctrinated into their rigid ideologies and thought control. The last greenseer has loyal servants who sing his praises. And, seemingly, no one ever leaves. You get linked up to a tree where you live until you die, and then your soul goes into said tree. Maybe Bran will need to escape this cult before it's too late. In 1976, George Martin released this novella. It's called A Song for Leah, and it's a sci-fi story because George is traditionally a sci-fi writer. It's about two telepaths named Rob and Lyanna, who go to a planet called Shkia. The natives are called Shkeen, and they're the most ancient known civilization in space, but they're stuck in the Bronze Age because they have no desire for technological innovation. Rob thinks that the Shkeen are truly happy. He says humans are ever focused on conquering the galaxy and discovering God, but man always falls short of his own expectations. On he goes, on and on, always looking, but always back to the same darkling plane in the end. For all his spaceships and colonizing, man is unable to find satisfaction, whereas the Shkeen have found God, and they're content. You see, the Shkeen worship a parasite called the Greeshka. At age 40, every Shkeen becomes joined, meaning they allow the Greeshka to infect them. By age 50, they go through final union, whereby every Shkeen willingly gives their life to the Greeshka, and it fills them with joy to die. So seductive is this cult that it's even taken on human converts. A man named Lester says, "I was admitted to the ranks of the joined only a few weeks ago. The first joining is a joyful time. I am joyful. Now I will walk the streets and ring my bells until the final union." Before, he was alone. Now he was joined. Robb tells Lester the parasite will kill him. It's drinking his blood, feeding on his tissue, and Lester doesn't care. According to members of the cult, the Greeshka does not kill. The Greeshka gives joy and happy union. Only those who have no Greeshka die. They are alone. Oh, forever alone. When a Shkeen goes to final union and sacrifices themselves to the Greeshka, they've joined the Hivemind. The union is a mass mind, an immortal mass mind, many in one, all love. The similarities to Weirwoods and Greenseers are obvious. In both stories, we have believers going into caves to become one with their gods, and both caves offer refuge from the typical surface climate. Cold caves on the hot planet Shkia, and warm caves beyond the wall in the north. Both Shkeen and Greenseers let their god consume them, the way the Greeshka eats a Shkeen, and the way a Weirwood sticks its roots through a Greenseer. The Weirwood also retains the Greenseer's memories and wisdom once they're dead. Without the knowledge of Greenseers, the trees are just trees. It's the magic that makes them divine. The differences between Greeshka and Weirwood are interesting as well. The Greeshka is a mindless parasite, whereas a Weirwood tree is alive, independent of a host. But both, in their separate ways, are a hive mind. However, the Greeshka needs corpses for nourishment, whereas a Weirwood provides nourishment to keep Bloodraven alive. And while the Greeshka eventually consumes every member of the cult, Greenseers can live without being attached to a tree. Bloodraven says their lives are short, so becoming wedded to the Weirwood tree can help to prolong a Greenseer's life. So what is George Martin's goal in creating another culty religion where its worshippers are part of a hive mind? Probably just that it's cool, and he expanded on his idea with the Weirwoods actually containing the wisdom of dead Greenseers, rather than being a mindless parasite. The Greeshka consumes a person's flesh, while a Weirwood consumes their soul. When they died, they went into the wood, into leaf and limb and root, and the trees remembered. All their songs and spells, their histories and prayers, everything they knew about this world. Maesters will tell you that the Weirwoods are sacred to the old gods. The singers believe they are the old gods. When singers die, they become part of that godhood. Well, if the Weirwoods are the old gods, and the Weirwoods are comprised of all the living memory of the Greenseers that went into the Weirwoods, then, by the transitive property, the Weirwoods aren't gods, they are Greenseers. Allow me to show my work. The singers of the forest believe the Weirwood trees are the old gods. Weirwood, W, equals old gods, OG. Additionally, Jojen tells us that when Greenseers die, they become part of the old gods' godhood. So Greenseers, G, also equals old gods, OG. Therefore, we can say that W equals G. The Weirwood trees aren't the old gods, they are Greenseers. Or rather, Greenseers are both the Weirwood trees and the old gods. They control them both. This speaks to a degree of agendas and misplaced magic that I will discuss forthwith. One of the biggest mysteries in A Song of Ice and Fire remains, where do the White Walkers come from? And since I don't want to commit to one theory in the face of compelling evidence for another, I shall present two origin stories for the others. Because in science, we must consider all possibilities and assess the veracity of all the evidence before upgrading a hypothesis into a theory, or a theory into a law. In Westeros, it's commonly believed that the first long night happened around 8,000 years ago, and before that, the children of the forest and the first men fought each other until they signed their pact on the Isle of Faces, and teamed up during the long night. These are the establishing facts, or at least the facts as the average Westerosi understands them. Some maesters question the timeline. My first theory is that the children of the forest created the others. We can't ignore that this is the origin story we got in GOT. The children used magic to create the Night King because they needed a way to defeat the first men.
You made the White Walkers.
We needed to defend ourselves.
From whom?
From you. From men.
And it's not far-fetched in the books either. There's an old story in Westeros about the children of the forest Greenseers turning the Weirwood trees into warriors. It's such a common folktale that it's transcended the north. Asha Greyjoy grew up hearing the story on the Iron Islands. Taken literally, we might imagine something akin to the Ents in Lord of the Rings, actual physical trees who walk and talk and fight like people. But maybe it's a sensationalized metaphor, and the real story is lost to time. And since a greenseer exists outside of time, the story will not be lost to Bloodraven or Bran. Taking what we already know about the greenseer's souls going into the Weirwood when they die, maybe the hive mind of greenseers in the Weirwood control the hive mind of White Walkers. The greenseer's souls not only go into Weirwood trees, but they can also go into another, meaning each White Walker, after it's been converted from a human, contains the soul of a greenseer from the Children of the Forest. We have supporting evidence for this too, with the ravens in Bloodraven's cave. Bloodraven says that dead greenseers' souls still live inside the birds. All of them. So perhaps dead greenseers live inside the others as well. It's all just one big magic system. Greensight, Weirwoods, Old Gods, others. The true magic lies within a greenseer, and they created the Old Gods, the Weirwood Hivemind, and the Hivemind of the others. So why would the Children of the Forest use magic to create the others, and then unleash the others onto the realms of men during the Long Night, which was after the Children of the Forest and the First Men signed their peace treaty? Well, initially, in the decades and centuries before the pact, yeah, the children wanted to use the others to kill humans, and by the time they made peace, the others could no longer be controlled. I think, if this is the route George Martin is headed, that this could be the quintessential example of one of A Song of Ice and Fire's most famous themes. Sorcery is a sword without a hilt. There is no safe way to grasp it. Although we only hear this quote twice, both times in Jon's chapters, and it comes from just one woman, Dalla, I definitely think it resonates heavily with the story. Val, Dalla's sister, makes the same point about fire as well as sorcery. Fire is a fickle thing. No one knows which way a flame will go. George Martin really wants to make this message clear. Great harm can be caused by unintended consequences. What were the unintended consequences of the Children of the Forest creating the others? They eventually lost control of the others, and now all of humanity is doomed. Or maybe some greenseers are still controlling the others. I'll get into that tantalizing theory later. First, let's also consider that the others might just be naturally occurring. They could simply be a natural race of animal, like humans and Children of the Forest and ravens and wolves. Osha, who as a wildling has some authority on the native species beyond the wall, says that north of the wall things are different. That's where the children went, and the giants, and the other old races. Well, what are the other old races? Mammoths for sure, and perhaps grumpkins and snarks. Why not White Walkers? There's no reason the others can't just be native to the north, probably originating in the land of always winter, because I suspect their bodies made of ice would probably melt down in the south. And if the others are a naturally occurring species, perhaps the Children of the Forest domesticated them to help fight the First Men, although now I'm just insulting their intelligence. The others weren't tamed like the giants tamed and rode mammoths. Just based off the prologue in Book 1, we know the others have a language that sounds like the cracking of ice on a winter lake. And they have personality, as we see them mocking Waymar Royce. So assuming the Children of the Forest didn't create the others in the first place, they would have needed to make a deal with them to help fight the First Men. Or they simply fried their icy brains Hodor style using their greenseeing magic and turned them all into a hive mind. Just like the Weirwood trees themselves are a hive mind of dead and dying greenseers. In either case, the others got out of hand and began killing the First Men even after the children had made peace with the humans. Or a separate sect of singers wanted to continue their war with the humans. Before I get into that, I do have more evidence that the Children of the Forest greenseers created the Old Gods, and what Northerners think of as the Old Gods is really just a collective memory of all those who have gone into the trees. Bran asks Jojen, what do the trees remember? Jojen says, the secrets of the Old Gods, truths the First Men knew, forgotten now in Winterfell. So when Ned Stark prays to Winterfell's heart tree, it's not gods he's praying to. It's the secrets and truths of all those who came before. Remember, some greenseers like Bloodraven are enthroned in weirwood trees, the roots literally running through their bodies, and when they die, they go into the wood, and the trees remember. So if greenseeing magic is responsible for the old gods, maybe R'hllor is just magic as well. The two religions seem intrinsically linked, since R'hllor is the god of fire, and his antithesis is the Great Other, the god of ice. R'hllorists believe in a messiah called Azor Ahai, who will come during the long night and defeat the others, who the old gods worshipping children of the forest probably created. True believers of both religions say that the gods can tell when someone is lying, and both religions practice necromancy. The Red God resurrects Beric Dondarrion, and will presumably resurrect Jon Snow as well. The children of the forest greenseers, who I've mathematically proven are the old gods, use necromancy to turn humans into others. Or at the very least, the others certainly use necromancy to turn dead humans into whites. The similarities between East and West continue. In Westeros, we have weirwood trees. In Qarth, way over in the east, and maybe other places in Essos, we have the weirwood-esque black-barked trees with blue leaves. These trees produce Shade of the Evening, a psychoactive drug very similar to the weirwood paste Bran eats. Weirwood paste helps Bran unlock his green sight, and at first it tastes awful, and then with each bite it tastes more and more amazing. Similarly, Dany's first sip of Shade of the Evening tasted foul, but by the end it was all the taste she had ever known. And both Dany and Bran compare Shade of the Evening and weirwood paste specifically to honey. George is making it very clear that these two trees are linked. Perhaps the wood from a black-barked tree is ebony. And at the House of Black and White in Braavos, the huge doors are made of equal parts weirwood and ebony, and inside they have chairs of ebony and weirwood. Ebony faces carved into the weirwood chairs, and weirwood faces are carved into the ebony chairs. The inverse faces are also present on the huge doors. George Martin wants us to associate weirwood and black-barked trees together. Opposites, but much the same. And it makes even more sense when we consider the children of the forest probably used to live or still live in Essos too. There is a region of forest in northern Essos called the Kingdom of the Ifekhevron. Ifekhevron means those who walk in the woods in Dothraki. And the big, strong, scary Dothraki warlords are too afraid to go there, in fear of the forest dwellers and their magic. But Corlys Velaryon did go there, and he found haunted grottos, strange silences, and carved trees. And it makes total sense that the children of the forest lived in Essos, as the two continents were once connected by a land bridge called the Arm of Dorne. This is how Native Americans came to America, by crossing the Bering Land Bridge from Siberia. So Westeros and Essos share the children of the forest. They share the exact same tree but in inverse colors, and they probably share the others too. Essos has its own legends about the Long Night, and in the Far East, there's a story from the Great Empire of the Dawn that says the Long Night began when the Bloodstone Emperor usurped and killed his sister, the Amethyst Empress. We also know about the Five Forts, a defensive structure similar to the Wall, which keeps away hordes of demons that sound like they could be the others and their army of whites. Let's go back to the Old Gods and the Red God. R'hllorists believe shadows are divine. They refer to R'hllor as Lord of Light and God of Flame and Shadow. Melisandre says that shadows are servants of light, the children of fire. They're a good thing, supposedly. However, in the prologue of Book 1, George Martin introduces the others as a white shadow in the darkness. A shadow emerged from the dark of the wood. It stood in front of Royce. Tall it was, and gaunt, and hard as old bones. Its armor seemed to change color as it moved. Here it was white as new fallen snow. There black as shadow. Everywhere dappled with the deep gray-green of the trees. Everything about R'hllor ties back to the Great Other, the Others, or the Old Gods in some way. And they're a religion from the East, where the Long Night also happened, where there are trees exactly like weirwoods except with inverse colors, and where the children of the forest or a closely related species either lived or still live to this day. the big year of 300 after conquest. Is this all a coincidence? No. R'hllor is just the same thing as the old gods in a different font. It has nothing to do with actual gods, and everything to do with magic. The Children of the Forest, or the Ithakevron, devised these gods using their magic. George Martin is a religion skeptic, and he critiques the blind, zealous belief in gods when more likely scenarios exist.
I was raised Catholic, but have long since stopped practicing. I suppose I'd be considered a skeptic now, and I just look at religions. Really, are you really going to kill all these people because a giant invisible guy in the sky told you to?
And since A Song of Ice and Fire is fantasy, the more likely scenario is magic. Because we know magic is real. Dragons and resurrections and whatnot. I'll wrap up my R'hllor thoughts after I discuss who controls the others. So it seems likely that the Children of the Forest created the others, or at least used magic to turn them into a human-killing hive mind. Paradoxically, I subscribe to the theory that Bloodraven is obsessed with the Azor Ahai prophecy, or the Prince That Was Promised prophecy, or whatever prophetic dream Aegon the Conqueror had. It might all be essentially the same thing. You can watch this video for more details on why I think that, since the last thing this channel needs is yet another Bloodraven rant, but it does seem odd that a man so concerned with the sanctity of House Targaryen would team up with the folks who are responsible for the hive mind of ice demons trying to wipe out all of humanity, to which House Targaryen belongs. So maybe the Children of the Forest are regretful, and they need Bloodraven's and Bran's help as powerful greenseers to destroy the monsters they unleashed. Earlier, I argued that dead greenseers could be occupying the others, just as they occupy the ravens that Bran tries to skin change into. So here's my theory. The others were created before the peace pact was signed on the Isle of Faces. The living Children of the Forest stopped their war with the First Men, but the dead greenseers were already stuck inside the others. They don't want to end their war with their oppressors, so Bloodraven, Bran, and the other Children of the Forest must stop them. I think this adds a deep, almost sympathetic backstory to the others instead of making them a purely evil horde of ice demons. They are the product of the First Men's genocide, and those wounds never healed. Now their fight is renewed. So the next question becomes, why were they dormant for thousands of years? Why are they just now beginning to march south on the realms of men? My guess is that the others, the souls of dead greenseers, are angry that their fellow Children of the Forest have begun working with humans. Their relationship with Bloodraven is an insult to the years of killing and stolen land that the children suffered at the hands of men. Now, with wildlings massing into a huge army under Mance Rayder, the Children of the Forest feel threatened once more, and so called upon their army of others who cannot truly be controlled. Remember, Mance Rayder spent years before A Game of Thrones begins visiting all the different clans of freefolk, consolidating their power under one king, and Mance was successful, with an army of 30 or 40,000 wildlings. Why did Mance Rayder do this? Because of the return of the others. Ironically, both outcomes were dependent on each other. The others began to stir because of the encroaching wildlings, who just 70 years ago consolidated under Rayman Redbeard. So Mance Rayder began gathering their power again, afraid of the others. So the others became even more violent, coming further south, killing more men. It's reciprocal. Also, the others' return is a gradual process. This is a misconception I see sometimes, that all the magic came back to the world in Book 1, when Dany hatched her dragons, and all the magic left the world when the last dragon died during the reign of Aegon III. But the others have been an issue since even before the prologue, which itself took place several months before Book 1 truly begins. Craster has been sacrificing his sons to the others for decades. In truth, maybe the others never really went away after the first long night. They're just becoming more bold. I understand that to many of you, the idea of the others being controlled by dead, green-seeing Children of the Forest is a bit tinfoily, but it's really not. It's basically a more compelling version of what Game of Thrones went with. Except in Game of Thrones, the Night King appears to lead the others, whereas there is no Night King in the books.
Come on over here.
Come on over. No, you flipped me off. Come on, coward. No. Come on. You're not an intellectual. You're a fake and a fraud.
The show just didn't want to commit to all that greenseeing business with the Children of the Forest. They didn't even commit to making Bloodraven. Also, George has sort of written this story before, in Tough Voyaging. In the short story Guardians, Haviland Tough goes to a world where a bunch of sea creatures are attacking the people who live there. But Tough finds a species called mudpots, who are linked to a hive mind that control less intelligent creatures. So Tough cuts a deal with them. The mudpots stop using the sea creatures to kill humans, and the human colonists stopped eating the mudpots and other intelligent species. In A Song of Ice and Fire, the Children of the Forest are the mudpots, and the others are their sea monsters. I guess Bran would be Haviland Tough in this scenario. And if this theory is true, the others are controlled by vengeful Children of the Forest greenseers, we can connect this to the similarities I pointed out between the old gods and R'hllor. Those gods aren't actually real. They're just easy ways for the singers of the forest to manipulate humans. And these particular singers want to sow chaos amongst the realms of men. So they make people like Melisandre believe a benevolent god is showing them visions of a hero to cast down the others. These dreams prompt her to join Stannis. They prompt Stannis to kill Renly and fight a huge war, and then go north and save humanity from the others. And why did Stannis go north? Yes, it was Davos who convinced him of his duty, but Stannis also drinks Melisandre's Azor Ahai Kool-Aid. Stannis pointed north. There is where I'll find the foe that I was born to fight. His name may not be spoken, Melisandre added softly. He is the god of night and terror, Jon Snow, and these shapes in the snow are his creatures. Stannis believes he must defeat the others because the Lord of Light hath deemed it so. Or, this was the Children of the Forest's way of manipulating human kings to come and get killed by the others. The same thing is happening in Essos, with the Red Priests of R'hllor proselytizing about Daenerys Targaryen being Azor Ahai. The Children of the Forest just want to set a trap, and humans are easily manipulated by divine purpose. Speaking of traps, I am reminded of the Night King's trap of Jon Snow's White Hunt to secure one of Daenerys' dragons. Now, while this episode was generally stupid, this part is kind of interesting, but...
If I speak, I am in big trouble, and I don't want to be in big trouble.
So that was a lot of yapping. Let's recap. The Children of the Forest greenseers send their souls and wisdom and whatever else into the Weirwood trees when they die. What we think of as the old gods are really a hive mind or collective consciousness of those greenseers. That stuff is pretty straightforward, so here's my tinfoil. The red god is so similar to the old gods that I wonder if it's all the same thing. Greenseers using their magic to manipulate humans into coming north and getting steamrolled by the hive mind of White Walkers. I don't know how Bran and Jon and Dany are going to save the world, but if I can figure it out before George Martin writes Winds, I guess I can make a follow-up video on that.
Mano Negra is exhausting. I'm very tired. So much sangria and wine, and it's been so much fun, and so many fans, and food, and good company, and books.
Although this whole channel is pretty much documenting my journey to get there. I don't know if I'll ever figure it out. Please, George, I love you. Let me know in the comments where you think the others come from, and how the Children of the Forest are involved. If you think this was all mostly nonsense, yeah, well, what did you expect? Thanks for watching and subscribing.